The day everything broke. My name is Martha Hale. I am 58 years old, and for most of my life, I believed I was ordinary. But on a cold Monday morning, everything I believed about myself broke, and something new began. That morning, the sky was gray, heavy, almost angry. I woke up with the same routine: make coffee, stare out the kitchen window, pretend life is okay. But that day, the silence felt different. It wasn't peaceful. It was loud, painfully loud. My phone buzzed at 9:12 a.m. A message from my workplace. Message I did not expect. A message that ended a 23-year chapter of my life. Martha, due to restructuring, we no longer need your position. Thank you for your service. I froze. My heart stopped for a moment. My fingers trembled so badly I almost dropped the phone. I read the message again and again as tears filled my eyes. 23 years. Gone in 3 lines. No warning, no meeting. Just a message. I sat down slowly on the kitchen chair, my legs shaking. My God, what do I do now? I whispered. For the first time in years, I felt truly alone. Not the normal, everyday loneliness of an empty house, but a deep, frightening loneliness that squeezes your chest and steals your breath. I stared at the small apartment around me, the quiet fridge, the old wooden table, the photographs of my daughter, Emma, now living in New York, the memories of my husband who passed away 4 years ago. Everything felt distant, cold, unfamiliar. Then something inside me cracked open. Not broken, but awakening. Because in that silence, something whispered, "Your life is not over, but it won't restart by itself." I wiped my tears, took a deep breath, and opened my laptop. But the reality hit me harder than I expected. Every job listing said the same thing: strong communication skills needed, English fluency required, confident English speaking is a must. I clicked and clicked, but every single opportunity demanded something I had never mastered: spoken English. Suddenly, my hands felt cold again. It was not just losing a job, it was realizing how small my world had become, how afraid I had always been to speak in English, how I avoided conversations, hid behind emails, and prayed no one would call me in English. My English wasn't terrible, but my fear was a deep, old fear. Fear of being judged, fear of making mistakes, fear of embarrassing myself. I leaned back in my chair and finally admitted something I had ignored for years. I lost my confidence long before I lost my job. That realization hit harder than the message because it was true. For years, English felt like a locked door, a door I never opened, a door that quietly controlled my life, a door I avoided because I believed I couldn't speak well. In that moment, I felt 58 years old, not in age, but in regret. Then the phone rang. It was my daughter, Emma. "Mom, are you okay? I got your message. I'm worried." I tried to sound strong. I failed. I I don't know what to do anymore, I said softly. There was silence on her end, a heavy silence. Then she said something that went straight to my heart. "Mom, you don't need your old life back. You need a new one." Her voice shook like she was holding back tears. You gave me everything. Now it's time to give yourself something. I closed my eyes. Her words were simple, but they felt like a warm light entering a cold room. But Emma, I said quietly, I'm scared. I'm not confident. I can't even speak English properly. She took a deep breath and replied, then start there. Learn, grow, speak. You're not too old. You're just getting started. Something in me shifted because for the first time I realized my fear of English wasn't just a language problem, it was a life problem. English was the wall standing between me and my future. I ended the call, stood up from my chair, and walked to my bathroom mirror. I looked at my face, tired, aging, marked by years of responsibilities. But behind my eyes, I saw something else, a spark, a small one, but real. I placed my hand on my chest and whispered to myself, you will rise again. Not tomorrow, not magically, but day by day by day. I opened YouTube, typed English lessons for beginners, clicked the first video, and as the teacher spoke slowly, clearly, warmly, my heart softened a little, my breathing calmed, my mind opened just a little more. It was the first English lesson of my new life. I didn't understand everything. I paused the video 27 times. I repeated sentences out loud, feeling shy, even though no one was watching. But I kept going because in that moment, something powerful awakened inside me. If I can speak English confidently, I can rebuild everything. That night, for the first time in a long time, I slept with hope, a small hope, a fragile hope, but a real hope. And that was enough to begin. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I didn't know if it was fear, excitement, or both. All I knew was this: my old life was gone, and if I wanted a new one, I had to build it myself. I made coffee and sat by the kitchen window. Outside, the sky was gray, the street quiet, the world ordinary. But inside me, something felt new, small, fragile, but alive. I took out a small notebook, the same one I used years ago for grocery lists. On the first page, my hand shaking slightly, I wrote 3 sentences. I want to learn English. I want to speak confidently. I want my life back. I stared at those words for a long time. They weren't just goals, they were promises. Promises to myself after years of ignoring my own needs. I opened my laptop and searched again. Learn English from home. Hundreds of results. Teachers, courses, apps, playlists. It felt overwhelming. Then I remembered what my daughter Emma said. You don't need everything. You just need to begin. So I clicked on one simple video, Basic English for Everyday Life. The teacher spoke slowly, clearly, warmly. I repeated after her, feeling stiff and awkward. How are you? I'm fine, thank you. What is your name? My voice sounded strange, like it didn't belong to me. I felt silly talking to a screen. Part of me wanted to close the laptop, but another part of me whispered, you said you wanted your life back. Keep going. So I did. I paused the video, rewound it, repeated lines over and over. Sometimes my mouth couldn't match the sounds. Sometimes my tongue felt heavy. Sometimes I got frustrated. Still, I kept going. By the end of that first day, I had written 14 new words in my notebook. 14. Not a lot to anyone else, but to me it was more than I'd learned in years. I closed the notebook gently and said out loud, "Good job, Martha." No one else was there to say it, so I said it to myself. The next day, I made a rule: English in the morning, English in the evening, no matter how I felt, no matter how busy or tired I was, even if it was only 10 minutes. Each morning, I watched a simple English lesson while I drank my coffee. Each evening, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and practiced speaking. I hated the mirror at first. It showed me everything: my age, my tired eyes, my uncertain mouth. But it also showed me one thing I desperately needed to see: effort. One night, I practiced a simple sentence: "My name is Martha. I want to learn English." I repeated it again and again. Sometimes it sounded okay, sometimes it didn't, but every time it felt a little more natural. Soon, I started changing my apartment. I put sticky notes on objects: door, table, glass, mirror, window. My home slowly turned into a small English classroom. Every time I touched something, I saw the English word. Every time I saw the word, I said it out loud. It was clumsy, simple, almost childish, but it worked. One afternoon, as I stuck a note on the refrigerator, I laughed softly and whispered, "I'm really doing this." For so many years, I had walked around my life half asleep. Now I was waking up. Days turned into weeks. My notebook filled with words, phrases, little victories. But the real change was happening in my mind. I started noticing English everywhere: on packages, on TV, on signs, on my phone. It felt like the language had always been there. I just hadn't been paying attention. Then came a small moment that meant the world to me. I went to the grocery store. When I reached the RE or checkout, the cashier asked, "Do you need a bag?" Normally, I would just nod silently, but that day, something inside me said, "Try." "Yes, please," I answered. Two simple words. My heart pounded. My cheeks grew warm, but I said them, and he understood. He didn't laugh. He didn't correct me. He just gave me a bag and smiled. I walked home holding my groceries and a quiet sense of victory. That night, I called Emma. "How's English going, Mom?" she asked. I hesitated, then told her, "I think I'm really learning. I'm practicing every day." She gasped, "Mom, I'm so proud of you." Her words wrapped around my heart like a warm blanket. I hadn't heard that tone from her in years. After the call, I stood in front of my mirror again, but this time I didn't just see a tired, scared woman. I saw someone trying, someone fighting, someone refusing to give up. I looked myself in the eyes and said, "I can do this." Not as a question, as a decision. That night, before going to bed, I opened my notebook and wrote, "Day 12. I am still here. I am still learning." It wasn't perfect English, but it was a perfect reflection of where I was, at the beginning of a new life. I didn't know a normal morning could change everything, but that's how life works sometimes. Big turning points come quietly, without warning. I was at my kitchen table, reviewing some phrases from the day before. The room felt peaceful. My favorite lamp was on, and a soft silence sat beside me like an old friend. Then I heard a knock on the door. It startled me. I don't get many visitors. When I opened it, I saw my neighbor from across the hall, Mrs. Turner. Her hands were shaking. She held an official looking letter, and her eyes were full of worry. Martha, could you help me? She asked. I invited her in right away. What's wrong? I said. She handed me the letter. It's from the council. It's all in English. I I don't understand it. I didn't sleep all night. I felt that old familiar fear rise in my chest. Official English. Real life English. No subtitles, no pause button. For a second, I wanted to say, I'm not good enough to help. But then my teacher's voice echoed in my mind. Learning becomes real when you use it. So I took a deep breath and said, I'll try. I read slowly, line by line. Some words I knew, some I guessed from context. Renovation, maintenance, temporary. 3 weeks. My tongue stumbled, but my brain started working. I realized I understood more than I thought. I explained the letter to her in simple words. They're fixing the water pipes. There will be some noise and sometimes no water, but it's only for a few weeks. It's just information, nothing dangerous. She let out a long breath. Oh, thank God. I was so scared, Martha. I thought something terrible was happening. Then she looked at me and said softly, You explained it better than anyone else could have. Her words hit me deeply. Me, the woman who was terrified of English, who had avoided phone calls and conversations, had just used English to help someone. After she left, I sat at the table and stared at the letter. My hands were still shaking, but now from disbelief. I really did that, I whispered. For the rest of the day, I felt lighter, like I was walking in slightly softer gravity. That evening, in my online English class, the teacher asked, Did anything interesting happen this week? Normally, I stayed quiet, but this time I raised my hand. My heart raced as I spoke. I helped my neighbor read a letter today. It was difficult, but I understood it, and I explained it to her. My teacher's face lit up. That's amazing, Martha. Everyone, let's clap for her. I heard applause through my speakers. Little digital claps from Brazil, Poland, India, Spain, and more. People I'd never met cheering for me. The teacher said something I wrote down immediately. This is what learning is about, not perfect grammar, not big words. Using your English to help, to connect, to live. I wrote that inside my notebook. Learning is using my voice in real life. In the days that followed, I held on to that sentence. I kept practicing daily. Some days flowed easily, other days were heavy and frustrating. But even on the bad days, I reminded myself I already used English to help someone once. I can do it again. A few days later, my son Daniel called. Mom, Mrs. Turner told me you helped her with a letter, he said. I felt shy suddenly. Yes, I did my best. He was quiet for a moment, then said, I'm proud of you, Mom. I hadn't heard that tone in his voice for a long time. It made my eyes sting with tears. After we hung up, I went to the mirror again. There I was, the same gray hair, the same lines on my face, but my eyes were different. They weren't empty. They were lit with something new, belief. I looked at myself and said, "You're changing." And for the first time, I believed it. I turned a new page in my notebook and wrote a single line. This is only the beginning. And I knew it was true. I never expected that the day my voice returned would be a completely ordinary afternoon. No celebration, no big achievement, just a moment that arrived softly like a whisper. I had just come back from the grocery store. My feet were tired and my mood was average. One of those silent days when life feels neither good nor bad, just there. As I walked down the hall toward my apartment, I saw a young woman sitting on the floor, her hands covering her face. Beside her lay a phone and a crumpled piece of mail. She looked up when she heard me. Her eyes were swollen from crying. "Ma'am, do you speak English?" she asked in a shaky voice. Not long ago, I would have said no. I would have apologized, panicked, escaped into my apartment, and shut the world out. But something inside me didn't let me walk away. "I'll try," I said. She handed me her phone. It was an email from her workplace, long, complicated, filled with instructions, warnings, and words most people never use in daily life. "I don't understand this. If I don't reply, they might fire me," she said, voice trembling. I took a breath. My heart beat fast, not from fear, but for responsibility. I read slowly, carefully, my lips moving softly as I sounded out the difficult words, and to my surprise, I understood most of it. I explained everything to her in simple English. "They changed your schedule. They added new safety rules. They need you to confirm you read this." Her eyes widened. "Are you sure? So I'm not in trouble?" "No," I said, smiling. "You just need to reply." She burst into tears, this time from relief. She held my hand and whispered, "You explained it better than my English teacher ever does. Thank you. Thank you so much." When she left, I closed my apartment door and leaned my back against it. My hands shook. My breath felt warm. My chest felt full. I had just helped someone with English. Me, Martha Hale, a woman who once trembled at simple greetings. I sank onto my couch, tears sliding down my cheeks. Not from sadness, but from something I hadn't felt in years: pride. For the next few hours, I replayed that moment over and over: the confused eyes, the trembling voice, the relief, the gratitude. I realized something life changing. All the evenings standing in front of my bathroom mirror, all the mornings practicing simple sentences, all the frustration, all the mistakes. It wasn't for nothing. English wasn't just a language anymore. It was becoming my strength. A new part of me I didn't know had survived the storms of my life. That night, I joined my online English class, still buzzing with confidence. When the teacher asked, "Did anything interesting happen this week?" I raised my hand without thinking. My voice didn't shake this time. My neighbor needed help with an email. I read it and explained it. It was difficult, but I did it. The teacher broke into the biggest smile I'd ever seen. Martha, she said, that is real learning, not textbooks, not grammar charts, but real life English. I'm very proud of you. The class applauded again, and something warm spread inside my chest. I didn't feel like the slowest student anymore. I didn't feel like the oldest one. I didn't feel like the one falling behind. I felt like I belonged. Later that night, I stood in front of the mirror again, but this time I didn't practice phrases. I looked at myself, really looked. The woman staring back at me was not the same lonely, broken person who started this journey. Her eyes were brighter, her shoulders more relaxed, her mouth softer, yet more confident. I whispered to my reflection, you're finding your voice again. And for the first time since my husband died, I felt alive. After that day, something awakened inside me. Not something loud or dramatic, something gentle, steady, like a flame that refuses to go out. My English routine no longer felt like survival. It felt like purpose. Every morning I practiced while drinking my coffee. Every evening I spoke in the mirror. Every day I wrote at least one sentence in my notebook. My name is Martha, and I will not quit. I learn even when it's hard. I am growing. These little sentences became my anchors, tiny pieces of courage I gave myself. But the biggest change was this. I realized my struggle had given me empathy. When someone hesitated while speaking, I didn't judge. When someone mispronounced a word, I didn't laugh. I understood deeply. And understanding is what turns pain into purpose. One night in English class, our teacher said, for next week, I want each of you to share your story. Why are you learning English? I froze, talking about myself, my past, my loneliness, my fear. I didn't think I could do it. But that night, when I sat down with my notebook, the words came on their own. I lost my job. I lost myself. And English helped me find the pieces. I wrote honestly without beautifying anything. My mistakes, my shame, my fear of speaking, my grief, my progress, my victories. When I finished, my hands were trembling, but the trembling wasn't from fear. It was from honesty. The next week, when class began, I was the first to volunteer. I don't know why. Maybe because I didn't want to lose my courage. I read my story aloud. My voice cracked a few times, but I didn't stop. When I finished, the class was quiet, not from judgment, but from connection. Then one student unmuted his microphone. Martha, thank you. I've been scared to speak too. Your courage helps me. Then another, and another. One woman said, I thought I was too old to learn, but you proved me wrong. Their words hit me so hard I cried after class, not out of sadness, but out of realization. My English journey wasn't just about me, it was helping others rise too. That night I wrote, my pain is becoming someone else's strength. And I meant every word. I never imagined that learning English would change more than just my language. I thought it would simply give me words, a few sentences, enough to get by. but it changed something far deeper. It changed me. Not suddenly, not dramatically, not like in movies, but slowly, quietly, like a soft sunrise that you don't notice at first until the room is filled with light. And one morning, I realized I was not the same woman who began this journey. The moment I noticed the change, it was a regular Tuesday. Nothing special, nothing planned. I woke up at the same time, made my tea like always, turned on my lamp, and opened my notebook. But before I started writing, I paused. My handwriting looked different. Not the letters, not the shape, but the confidence behind them. It hit me suddenly. I was no longer writing like someone who was trying. I was writing like someone who believed she could grow. I whispered to myself, I'm changing, aren't I? And the truth echoed inside me. Yes, I was. My routine turned into identity learning English, used to feel uncomfortable, forced, awkward, like I was pretending to be someone I wasn't. But now something had shifted. I woke up wanting to learn, wanting to practice, wanting to speak. My routine wasn't a routine anymore. It was part of who I was becoming. In the mornings, I practiced listening while I drank my tea. In the afternoons, I reviewed vocabulary. At night, I spoke to the mirror, not out of obligation, but because I wanted to hear my voice rise again. I didn't just want English, I wanted myself. And every word I learned felt like a little piece of me returning. How English changed the way I walked through the world. Something else changed too, my relationship with the world around me. A few months earlier, I would avoid conversations, avoid eye contact, avoid asking questions. I felt small, unsure, almost invisible. But now, I walk through the grocery store with a different energy. Not loud, not bold, but steady. I wasn't terrified to speak anymore. I wasn't ashamed to try. Even if I made mistakes, I didn't crumble inside. The first time I said good morning confidently to the cashier, he smiled and replied warmly. It was a small exchange, but it felt like climbing a mountain. I wrote in my notebook later, small victories create big changes. And that sentence carried me through the many difficult days. Helping others became part of my life. One afternoon, while walking through the hallway of my building, I saw a family staring at a notice taped to the wall. They looked confused. The father squinted at the text. The mother shook her head. The teenage boy looked worried. A few months earlier, I would have whispered, I can't, and walked away. But that day, something in me said, go help them. So I did. I stepped closer and said, do you want help reading this? Their relief was instant. Yes, please, the mother said. We don't understand this English. I read it slowly, calmly, confidently. It explained the new trash collection schedule and a temporary water shutoff. Simple information, but confusingly written. The mother said, you don't know how much this helps us, thank you. The teenage boy added, you explained it better than our teacher. I laughed, but inside, something warm spread through me. For the first time in years, I felt useful. like I still mattered, like my life still had value, like I could help someone, even in a small way. When I returned to my apartment, my hands shook a little, not from fear, but from pride. I whispered to myself, "You did something good today." And it meant everything how my daughter reacted to the new me. That evening, I called Emma. The moment she answered, she said, "Mom, you sound different today." I asked, "How?" She paused and said something I wasn't ready for. "You sound happy." Happy. That word hit me hard. I hadn't used that word to describe myself in years, maybe decades. "I helped a family today," I told her. "I read a notice for them and explained it." I heard her breathe in sharply. "Mom, that's incredible. You're doing things you never thought you could do." Her voice cracked a little. And then she said the words that made me cry. "I'm proud of you." I closed my eyes, letting the tears fall softly, because it had been so long since someone said those words to me. After the call, I wrote in my notebook, "Learning English gave me back my relationship with my daughter. Because it did. I became someone she could admire again, someone she felt close to." The shift inside my mind. Over the next weeks, I noticed something unusual. English was no longer that scary language from outside. It was something I began thinking in. While cooking, I would say, "I am cutting the vegetables." While cleaning, "I am folding the clothes." While walking, "The weather is warm today." These weren't just sentences, these were bridges. Bridges between silence and voice, between doubt and confidence. I started thinking in English first, then in my native language. My brain was changing, growing, adapting. And the more it changed, the more I felt alive. The class where I finally felt like myself one evening, in my online class, the teacher asked, "Who would like to read today?" My heart jumped. The old fear still there, like a shadow. But I remembered the people I helped. I remembered my progress. I remembered Emma's voice saying, "I'm proud of you." And I raised my hand. When I read, my voice shook only at the beginning, then it steadied, then it grew. My teacher smiled warmly. "Martha, your improvement is incredible." And then something happened I never expected. My classmates clapped. For me, people from different countries, different cultures, different ages, cheering for the woman who once couldn't say a single sentence without fear. When class ended, I sat quietly, letting it all sink in. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the slowest student. I didn't feel old. I didn't feel out of place. I felt capable. The sentence that changed everything that night, instead of writing vocabulary in my notebook, I wrote a single powerful line. "I am not starting over, I am starting again." Starting over means erasing the past. Starting again means using the past as fuel. My pain gave me empathy. My mistakes gave me humility. My loneliness gave me courage. My age gave me wisdom. And English gave me a new identity, a new version of me. But the biggest change was this: I started to love myself again. Not perfectly, not every day, but more than before. I whispered to my reflection that night, "You're becoming someone new." And for the first time, I believed it completely. I used to believe that life gave you only one chance to succeed, one chance to be confident, one chance to learn something new, and if you missed that chance, you were finished. But today, as I sit by my window with my notebook open, I realize how wrong I was. Life gives you thousands of chances, but most of us never take them because we think we're too late, too old, too slow, too broken. I felt all of that before I started this journey. I felt like a woman whose life had already been decided for her. My world was small, quiet, and filled with fears I never said out loud. But English, this language I once avoided, gave me something I didn't expect. It gave me a new beginning. This final chapter of my story isn't about grammar, vocabulary, or pronunciation. It's about something deeper. It's about the moment you stop surviving and start living again. The journey began in silence, and now it ends with a voice, my own voice, stronger, clearer, and more alive than ever. I want to tell you what happened in the moment everything changed for me, because every transformation has a turning point. This is mine. It was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind of morning where the world feels gentle and slow. I was sitting at my table, reviewing vocabulary like I did every day. The sun was soft, the air warm, and there was nothing extraordinary about the moment. But then I picked up a book. Not just any book. It was the English novel I had tried to read 3 years earlier, the one that defeated me. Back then, every page felt like a mountain. Every sentence felt like a failure. I remember the night I tried reading it for the first time. I cried after 10 pages. I closed the book, put it on a shelf, and whispered, maybe this is not for me. But that morning, something strange happened. I opened the same book, and it didn't scare me. I began reading, slowly at first, then smoothly, then naturally. I didn't understand every word, but I understood the story, the emotion, the flow. And after 7 pages, I put the book down and stared at the wall. Because for the first time in years, I realized something powerful. I was no longer the woman who quit that night. I was someone new. Tears gathered in my eyes, not sadness, but recognition. I recognized my own strength. I whispered to myself, you made it. But the truth is, that moment didn't define my journey, it reflected it. The real change happened quietly through all the days when I didn't feel strong, through the days when I didn't feel smart, when I didn't feel confident, but still practiced, still learned, still tried. Change doesn't happen when you succeed. Change happens when you continue despite not seeing success. That's why I kept going. Later that same day, something unexpected happened. My neighbor, Mr. Lewis, knocked on my door. He never knocks. He always waves politely in the hallway and keeps walking. So when he showed up at my door, holding a letter, he looked embarrassed. Could you read this for me? He asked. My wife usually does it, but she's out of town. Something inside me froze. A few months ago, this situation would have terrified me. The pressure, the possibility of misunderstanding something, the fear of disappointing someone. But I didn't feel fear this time. I invited him in, sat us at a table, and read the letter out loud. It was a medical notice, simple, direct, but filled with difficult vocabulary. When I finished, he sighed with relief. You read it beautifully, yes, he said. I didn't know you were so good at English. I laughed because for most of my life I didn't know either. After he left, another realization hit me. I was becoming someone other people relied on. Not because I was perfect, not because I was fluent, but because I showed courage. Courage to use what I had learned. Later that evening, my daughter called again. She had something in her voice: warmth, admiration, a hint of pride. Mom, she said, I've been thinking, why don't you visit? Spend a week with us. You can talk to my friends, meet my colleagues, practice your English in person. You'd love it. I froze for a moment. A few months ago, I would have rejected the idea immediately. Traveling, talking to strangers, speaking English in public? Impossible. But now something inside me opened. A door. A possibility. A version of myself I had forgotten I could be. I'd like that, I said, surprising myself. You would? Her voice lifted with joy. You really would? I think it's time, I answered softly. I'm not afraid anymore. After the call ended, I sat in silence, holding my phone against my chest. Not afraid anymore. I had never said those words before, but saying them felt like reclaiming a part of my life that had been lost. That night, I stood in front of the mirror. I looked at myself the way a stranger might, a woman who had been broken, but not destroyed, a woman who had been silent, but not voiceless, a woman who had been afraid, but learned to be brave again. I whispered, You're doing it. You're really doing it. And for the first time, I didn't see the mistakes in my reflection. I saw the growth, the resilience, the new confidence forming like light around me. Over the next few days, something beautiful started happening. People began talking to me more. Not because my English was perfect, but because I no longer hid behind my fear. At the grocery store, at the bus stop, at the clinic reception, people trusted me to speak, and I trusted myself to try. Confidence is not loud. Confidence is quiet strength. Confidence is the moment you choose not to run from yourself. One afternoon, I attended my online class, and the teacher said, Today we're practicing storytelling. Who wants to start? The old me would have waited for someone else, but I raised my hand. Not because I wasn't nervous, but because I was tired of letting fear win. I began telling a simple story about my day, but the teacher stopped me halfway. Martha, she said, your voice has changed. You're speaking like someone who owns her story. Those words broke something inside me, something heavy, something old. I felt tears gathering, but this time they weren't from shame. They were from pride. After class, one of my classmates messaged me privately. You inspire me. I hope one day I can speak like you. I sat staring at that message, stunned. Me? Inspiring someone? I had spent years believing I was behind everyone else, and now someone wanted to follow me. That night, I wrote in my notebook, "You don't become confident by being perfect. You become confident by refusing to stop." As the days passed, my sense of self changed even more. I started organizing my study space, buying new books, planning my lessons, setting goals not for survival, but for growth. English was no longer something I learned, it was something I lived. The final emotional moment came unexpectedly. A local community center posted a small notice: English conversation volunteers needed. My heart beat faster. A few months ago, I couldn't speak to a cashier. Now, could I help others speak? I walked to the center with shaky hands. The woman at the desk smiled and asked, "How can help you?" I swallowed hard and said, "I'd like to volunteer." Her face lit up. "Wonderful. We need people just like you, just like me." That sentence stayed with me the whole day. People like me, people who struggled, people who learned, people who didn't quit. And that's when I realized the truth. I was no longer learning English to survive. I was learning English to live, to connect, to help, to grow, to continue becoming the woman I always meant to be. The next evening, I sat with my notebook open and wrote my final reflection for this chapter of my life. I am not finished. I am becoming. And then, with a steady hand, I added one more line. If you are listening to my story now, remember this: you can rise again. You can learn again. You can rebuild your life from any point. You just need one brave moment to begin. I closed the notebook gently. My journey wasn't ending, it was opening. And now, if you're listening to me, I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me years ago. You are not too late. You are not too old. You are not too far behind. You are not broken. You are not finished. You are in the middle of becoming the person you were always meant to be. Stand up, speak again, learn again, begin again. Your story starts now. And if my journey has touched you, helped you, or inspired you even a little, then I ask you from my heart, please like this video, comment your story, and subscribe to this channel so we can continue this journey together.